Okay, so we will now resume our discussion on the existence of God, or the arguments for the existence of God. We talked about the argument from origin, or the cosmological argument, or the question of origin. Where did the universe come from? By the way, there is a sub-category that we haven't touched that also deal with the question of origin. Where did we come from? That's a whole different discussion. But now we'll move into the argument from morals or morality. How do we determine what's right and what's wrong? How do we know what's right and what's wrong? And the question that I want to have discuss with you is, do objective moral values exist or no? When I say objective, I mean, is there any true sense of what is right and what is wrong that is determined outside of you? Do we have this sense of oughtness? You ought to do this, or you ought to do that. Or is there not? Francis Schaeffer, a theologian and philosopher, said, if there is no absolute moral standard, then one cannot say in a final sense that anything is right or wrong. Because right, based on what? Wrong, based on what? So the question here is, are there objective moral values or are there not? Are they subjective or objective? We know that there is good that is good all the time. That's good then, now, and forever. That is good here, there, and everywhere. And that is good for this group of people and this group of people. So it's across, it's transcendent over culture, over people, and over people, space, and time. What is good? Courage is good. Honesty is good. Loyalty is good. Name a few. Tell me more. What is absolutely, objectively good? Huh? Kindness. Love, of course. Mercy. What is objectively good again? A couple. Huh? Trustworthiness, fidelity or trustworthiness. Love, bravery, kindness. All of these are good. Does it matter which culture you're in? Are they good in India? Are they good in Australia? Are they good in Europe? Are they good in the States? Are they good in Egypt? Yes. Now, are there things that are bad? Give me some. Huh? Killing. What else? Killing for no reason. Qualify it. Okay, عشان I don't want to open a can of worms. Okay, huh? Lying, dishonesty, cowardice. Very good. Huh? Infidelity, jealousy. The opposite of all of those. There you go, you can sum it up. So we know that cheating is bad. Dishonesty, rape, cowardice, bigotry, hatred, all of these are bad. Are they bad only here, or are they bad everywhere? So we know that objective values exist. When I say objective, I mean they are above you, and they don't depend on you. You are a subject. And when I say objective, they depend on the object outside of you. They're not subjective. Yes, sir. Bigotry. What's bigotry? Anybody knows? When they call you, you're a bigot. Racist. Who said that? Yes. Racist, or I guess racist is the closest one. Bigotry, racist, or huh? Prejudice. That's actually a better word. Prejudice. Yes. Better definition. So, civil laws differ from one society to another, but the laws of morality, they do not differ. Now here's the question. Where do these moral values come from? Where do they come from? And more importantly, on what basis are these moral values founded? I'll give you again 4 possible explanations, and I like to kind of frame the discussion with, God bless you, frame the discussion with kind of, not an argument, like let's see what the explanations are in a logical way, and let's see which one makes sense, which one doesn't, and come up with a conclusion so that you have some kind of linear thinking of, okay, this is what explains that, and we have this explanation, you have this explanation, and which one of these makes most sense so that you can follow the thought. These moral values come from society, which is the most common one. Society came up, or culture came up with what is good and what is bad. One explanation. Reason. These values came from human reason. And there are proponents of these explanations that I will share with you as well. I didn't just make that up. These values came from evolution. And by the way, I hope that we don't open that can of worms of evolution in this weekend. Maybe we can do this on another weekend. Or God. These values came from God. So let's explain and discuss all these 4 and see which one makes most sense. Sounds like a plan? Okay. The first one, society. Does morality come from society? Does it or does it not? What do you guys think? Yes or no? If no, then why not?
Society is not a being, it has to be from people. People create the things that are made in society.
Very good. But couldn't just society say, we're going to get together and we're going to determine what's right and what's wrong? It's still people. Then you're saying morality came from people. No. Okay, higher than that. Okay, good, but you're right. You're right. I've known Naveen since I was 15 years old, so we go way back from San Francisco. Anyways, what else? Why else? Why not? Or why yes? Does it come from society or not?
If it did come from society, you would expect that different nations would have different sets of morals.
Very good. Very good. Different nations may have different sets of morals. But all these that I've listed, they seem to be universally agreed upon. Okay? Morals, do or do they not come from society? If morals come from society, then we should have accepted Nazi Germany as good, because they did, right? If morals comes from society, then it would make it impossible for us to criticize other societies' practices. Then we should not have invaded this country, or we should not have done this, we shouldn't have done... Why? They believe, this culture believes that women shouldn't drive, or whatever. That's what they believe in. That's their truth. That's their objective values. Why do we think this is bad, or women are whatever? So all of these things, all of these culture reforms wouldn't be possible if morality is defined by cultures, by society. But here's a question that someone asked me once. He said, well, what about the variation in moral practices? Wouldn't that indicate that morality is specific to culture? Variations in moral practices. In other words, you see one culture, like India, for example, they used to kill widows. Do you all know about that practice? Anybody knows that practice? You knew that, okay. They used to kill themselves, or kill if a woman, if her husband dies and she becomes a widow, they would say, okay, well, she has no worth or value to live anymore, so they would kill her, and they would feel that this is totally fine. That's why when you said killing, I wanted to say unjustified. But yeah, it's a cultural practice. And you see variations. In Egypt, there are variations on how these are carried out, right? And you can say, well, if it's different in Egypt than it is in the States, then there must be no objective values. Then culture determines what these values are. Here's when I would like to mention to you that there are 2 things that I want to share, that I want to make sure you distinguish. Perception and values. These 2 are different. I may have a different perception of the values but I cannot change the value itself. And I'll give you some examples. The perception is what is. It's descriptive. The values is what ought to be. It's prescriptive. Okay? And I'll give you examples that will illustrate what I mean. Perception tells you what is the case. What do I see? That's how I perceive the facts or the situation. The values are not only descriptive, they explain what is. Values are prescriptive, they tell you what ought to be. You see the difference? For example, there's a confusion between perception and values in many instances. If you were to ask Hitler, do you think that killing innocent people, do you think that this is a good thing to do or bad? What do you think he would say? It's bad. Actually, he actually said that. It's bad to kill innocent people. What about the 6 million Jews that you claim to have killed? They were not innocent. As a matter of fact, he said they were subhuman. You see the difference between the values and the perception of the situation? He cannot escape the value, or else he would be admitted to a psychiatric hospital or to jail. If he comes out and says, yes, killing innocent people is good and that's what I'm doing, he can't do that. You can't escape the value, but you can shape your perception in a way that justifies what you're doing, but not against the values. I'll give you another example, controversial. Let's say a woman that is just for the fun of it, here's the abortion debate. She's going through abortions just for the fun of it. Okay, maybe let's just say, I'm not going to talk about the reasons or anything like that. And then you're asking her this question. Hey, young lady, do you think killing innocent children, do you think this is a good thing or a bad thing? She will say, no, killing innocent babies is a bad thing. You shouldn't do that. Well, what about this, these casual abortions that you're going through every now and then? Well, they are not babies yet. Do you see my point? So what I'm trying to say is, you can't escape the value, but you can redefine your perception so that you can do whatever you please and feel good about it. But you have to understand, values are values. They are bound on you and me, on this culture, that culture. It is objective, or they are objective. Where did that objectivity come from? Where did it come from? Okay. And here's a verse from Isaiah 5:20. Woe to them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. And this is precisely what our culture is doing nowadays. Okay, next question, or next possible explanation. Does morality come from human reason? Can we reason ourselves into creating this moral standard? Can we or can we not? Yes, sir. Hold on.
Reason changes, after time passed by.
Very good. Reason changes. So if reason changes, then we should expect that courage at one point will be a bad thing, or very good. Yeah, reason changes, and something has to be unchangeable. What's the word I was looking for? Something doesn't change. Huh? Not constant. Immutable. That's the word. Immutable, that holds on to this objective value. Kai Nielsen, he's an atheistic ethicist. Ethicist, he said ethics. Morality, in other words. Professor of philosophy at the University of Calgary, he said this. And he's an atheist. He said, human reason, okay, I'm going to have to lower my voice, forgive me. Human reason offers no guidance in developing a concept of true morality. We have not been able to show that reason requires the moral point of view, or that all rational persons should not be individual egoists. Reason doesn't decide here. The picture I have painted for you is not a pleasant one. Reflection on it depresses me. Pure practical reason, even with a good knowledge of the facts, will not take you to morality. You know why else? If I have invented these moral laws and values, then I can likewise dismiss them when they interfere with my self-interest. If I invent the rules of the game, then I can also dismiss them. If at one point I said it is good or it's bad to be a coward, or to be it's bad to cheat or to be dishonest, I made that rule, then I can also likewise dismiss that rule and be dishonest. If I made it, then I can dismiss it. But I don't seem to allow myself to dismiss these rules.
Is that happening in society right now, though? Like, for example, with the homosexuality argument?
Absolutely. Very good. I just didn't want to yeah, you're absolutely right. It is happening. And not just homosexuality, and a plethora of other practices. Yes, sir. Isn't this what's happening in society right now with the homosexuality movement or ideology, if you will? Yeah. So human reason could not have produced this moral value. Right. It doesn't come from society. It doesn't come from me. Does it come from evolution? And that's actually what many claim. Many atheists, actually this is what they kind of back their, or they hold as their counter argument, is that, Darwinian evolution, that is, we kind of evolved into knowing what's right and what's wrong. You're shaking your head, so you have an answer.
Well, from the evolutionist perspective, we would do things for our own self-interest to survive, and none of the things that you listed, the good characteristics, help for survival at all. Sylvia.
Sylvia, wonderful. You guys hear that? So evolution actually contradicts all of these things that I just mentioned, because all of these things are against our self-interest, which is our species' survival. And that's the whole theory of evolution, is that we need to increase the survival of our species. I'm going to even make it more dramatic than that. So, here's this point. Okay, let's talk about Richard Dawkins a little bit. Dawkins also argues, for the sake of time, I'll just skip. Richard Dawkins, the atheist British scientist, he said, "My own feeling is that a human society based simply on the genes law of universal ruthless selfishness would be a very nasty society in which to live. Be warned that if you wish, as I do, to build a society in which individuals cooperate generously and unselfishly towards a common good, you can expect little help from biological nature. Let us try to teach generosity and altruism, because we are born selfish." Altruism is selfless love. So we are born selfish, and that's what evolution is all about. Questions for those who believe that morality came from evolution. And here's the, like I said, I'm going to be more dramatic to that extent. Rape enhances the survival of species, if you think about it. Does that make it good? The survival of species is enhanced by rape, isn't it? You're creating more. It doesn't matter how. You're creating more people. Does that make it good? Killing the handicapped and the weak enhances the survival of species. Whose ideology was this? Hitler. Friedrich Nietzsche is exactly the German philosopher who had the greatest influence on Hitler. As a matter of fact, there's a history between Friedrich Nietzsche and Adolf Hitler. Hitler said that I want to create a generation that is strong, and the Superman kind of ideology that he had. I want to kill all the weak, kill all the handicapped. Survival of species. Okay? But does that make it good? Another question. Why aren't morals evolving with me? If they come from evolution and we are evolving, Why aren't morals evolving? Why wouldn't theft at one point in time be a good thing? مش كده? Evolution implies change over time. And why aren't these morals changing? Why is dishonesty has always been bad? Why is dishonesty not evolving with me if really it comes from evolution? Another question for those who asked, who claim evolution evoked morality. How do I know that your mind is not just taking part in one more adaptive exercise? Why would I listen to you if you're telling me morality came from evolution? Well, why should I trust your mind and not mine? Why should I trust some chemicals and this and that are put together, and why would you trust my chemicals? You see? Why would your statement be authoritative on me and not mine? Because evolution implies that we're all evolving and we all have our own thing. Well, why is your claim standardized or becoming the standard of morals? How can an impersonal, just happen universe provide the basis for the true, the good, and the beautiful? I hope that you guys looked that up. Truth, goodness, and joy. Remember last night? The true, the good, and the beautiful. If evolution had produced morality, or morality came from evolution, then we wouldn't have a difference between these two people. Why would Mother Teresa be better than Hitler, or why would Hitler be worse than Mother Teresa? I had two other, I had St. Anthony and, anyways, I just figured these are pretty universally known. How can you say Mother Teresa is better than Hitler? How? Based on what? Doesn't she have the same evolutionary makeup as Hitler? But why would make her better? What's the standard by which you can say she's better than he is, or he's worse than she is? Moral Animal, Why We Are the Way We Are, is a very good book, but this is a book that, it's a good book that speaks about the evolution as basis for morality, so read it with that in mind. It's his name is Robert Wright, I think. It's Robert Wright, yes. Robert Wright is the kind of proponent of this notion that evolution produced morality, or morality came from evolution. There's another book that I would love to maybe email to all of you that answers that argument. And I think we might have shared some of it here in our discussion about morality and evolution. But if you're interested to discuss or study this further, because I know that this could be a subject that of interest to some of you, then let me know, and I can share with you. And I'll share this with Abuna and Bishoy. I'll share some of this material with them so that they can, and actually I can post it on the Facebook page. And y'all are familiar with the 360 Facebook page, and so if you go to it, I'll have some of the information listed on it as well as reference for you. So the source of objective morality, where does it come from? It can't come from something less than me. Evolution, reason, society are all less than you. Morality cannot come from something less than yourself. Why? How can something less than me have so much authority over me? How? Then morality must come from something above me. Only then will it have this authoritative inherent power over me. In other words, you can sum it up by saying this. Morality doesn't come from you. Morality comes to you. Morality doesn't come from you. Morality comes to you. Do you see? But if you don't believe in anybody above you, you have to explain the moral laws and values, so you construct some myths and fake sources of this moral value. You can say reason, you can say evolution, you can say self-made, you can say whatever you want. But how can something less than you have authority over you? Yes? Society is, he said, society is more than you. Absolutely not. Think about it. Society is made up of what? People. That's it. You know what society is? 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 makes a society. Society is made up of individuals. So it's not less than you. At best, equal to you. But if something that is equal to you, I'll grant you that. Society is equal to you. How can something that's equal to you have such a compelling authority over you? Do you get it? All right. So if morality, I'm sorry? Oh.
Also, society is based on history. History is written by winners. For example, written by winners. If the Axis won the war, World War II, and then Nazi with his society.
Very good. Very good.
Same happened to Egypt 1400 years ago.
Yes.
That's what society is based on history. History based on winners.
I wouldn't say society is based on history. History describes various societies through the ages, but I wouldn't say it's so. But I see your point. I see your point. The moral law of each society has been documented through history, and you can't go back and claim that has some kind of higher authoritative power, right? No?
What I want to say is, it's very good. It's not written on the stone. It's
Oh, it changes.
yes.
It changes.
It changed by who's writing it.
Yes.
Who's writing it?
Yes.
Allies won the war, so they wrote the history. So we know that Nazi is bad. If Nazi won the war,
then we good.
Exactly.
Very good. Okay. That's forgive me, I misunderstood your question. That's a good point. So if society and reason and evolution are not a good explanation for our sense of good and bad, if morality doesn't come from us, but it comes to us, if morality is given, who is the giver? And again, I'll use the same picture. Who is the giver? He is the giver. Just like it's the same picture you saw that answered the question of where did the world come from? Because he created the world, he set the moral laws of it as well. C.S. Lewis in Mere Christianity said, the moment you say, listen to this, he said, the moment you say that one set of moral ideas can be better than another, you are in fact measuring them both by a standard. Saying that one of them conforms to that standard more nearly than the other. Listen to this. But the standard that measures two things is something different from either. You see what I'm saying? Or what he's saying? Different. In other words, it has to be not me, not you. It has to be different from us. If I say this is good, and you say this is bad, well, we have to appeal to someone or something different from me and you to determine the goodness and the badness. Criteria that is beyond me and you, different from you and I. Yes, okay. You and then, go ahead.
What do you say about someone who's morally good but who's not a Christian?
That's the question next.
Or doesn't believe in God?
That's the question next. Very good question. That's actually one of the questions that one of you had on the Facebook page. Can I live a good moral life without believing in God? Or what about those who are very, very good people, but they don't believe in God? Yes, we'll discuss that. So, to finish this concept, or this point of morality points to God by another way. What I'm trying to equip you with, with the grace of God, is not arguments, but positions or arguments, for the lack of a better word, to help maintain or have an intellectual conversation with those who don't believe. So the argument from cosmology or the origin of the world, and then the argument from morality. Morality itself points to the existence of God, not only by the process of elimination. It can't be from culture, it can't be from reason, it can't be from me. But also morality points to God in a different way. Do you know how? Moral rules or moral laws are not physical in nature, are they? They're not. They're actually a kind of communication. One giving a command in a form of a command. One giving a command and one receiving the command. Morality is not physical, it's not tangible, or it's not something concrete. It's an abstract, immaterial form of a communication. Okay? One giving the command and one receiving the command. That's why a violation of this command is not just a broken code of conduct. It's actually a violation of the person who gave the command. Let me illustrate with an analogy or an example. Okay? Theory has to be followed by an example, or else it wouldn't be conveyed correctly. So if I were to, let's say you're driving down the street, 2 o'clock in the morning, and you're tired, you want to go home, and there's a red light, and there's no one in town, and you cross the red light, and then you go home. Do you think about it all day? Do you feel guilty? No. Because you did what? You have broken a code of conduct, a code of ethics that you have, ethics. You violated a code of the Department of Motor Vehicles, thank you, DMV. Okay? But let's say you are, I'll give you the dramatic example. You're married, and you are not faithful to your spouse. And you go home, do you think about it? Do you feel a little bit of guilt or a little bit of uneasiness? Yes, more so than breaking the red light. Do you know the difference? One is a violation of a physical kind of code of conduct. The other is not a violation of a physical code of conduct, is a violation of a person. And that's a big difference. When you violate a commandment that's given to you by a person, you will experience guilt, ethical pain, shame. Why? Because you have violated a person. Only when you violate a person will you feel guilt and shame, not when you break the red light or what have you. Do you see the difference now? So that guilt, that shame, that ethical pain that you feel within you points to one simple truth. There's a person that I was dishonest to, or there was a person that I didn't reciprocate love or what have you. So that's what I mean by morality points to God in its deepest sense. Yes, sir.
So the morals we received, you're saying, are from God. Is God under those morals? Does He use those morals? Because think about it, there's that question that, oh, why are there sick people in the world? Why is there death? If He has the capability of healing or preventing that stuff, isn't it immoral for Him not to?
Yeah. Yes. God, let me answer the first question you had. These morals are grounded in God because of who He is. Because of who He is. God, by definition, is not, as we said last night, is not only the truth, but by definition, God is the goodness, or good. These morals get their goodness only because they are anchored in Him who is good. You see? So God is not bound by these. He's actually the source of these. Okay? But that's the first part of your question. The second part of your question is the problem of evil and suffering. Well, why wouldn't He let these sick people suffer, and why would He allow these things if He's a good God? A good God, that's one of His attributes, does not contradict with another attribute. What is it? Huh? Fairness and justice. Okay? Justice and fairness. Also, His love. His love doesn't contradict with His justice, with His goodness. As a matter of fact, He is a good, just, loving God. His attributes are absolute. Okay? Mutlaqan, absolute. So when we discuss the why is there evil and suffering at the end of either today or tomorrow, we'll talk more about the problem of evil and pain and where's God when my heart aches and so on and so forth. That's going to be a different discussion because I don't think we'll do it justice by just answering the question real quick. Yes? Yes.
Does that mean I don't have morals? Or-
No, that's a good question. Yeah, you do have morals. You do have morals. If you're an atheist, you do have morals, and that's going to be, actually, that should probably lead us, here you go. Perfect segue to the next slide. This we'll touch on your question when we talk about this. Can we be morally good without God? Now, this is what is it, $6 million question, they say? What, can we be morally good without God? Yes or no? And if yes, why? If no, why not? Yes or no? Yes. Why? Excellent. We are created in His image. Very good. Somebody else said something. Yes. We already have the standards in our conscience, embedded in us.
No, we can't if God exists, but because this has to do with whether we know something or not. I mean, if something exists, we could be moral without God, but because He exists, we can't be moral even if we don't know Him.
Very good. That's a little philosophical, but yes, absolutely right. We can't be if we don't know Him. Or our morality could be based on anybody other than. We would call ourselves morals if He exists. Right. But to answer this question, it would be very foolish to say no. I mean, I have a lot of friends who are not Christians, but they're very, very good moral people. I mean, they live a very, very good moral life. You cannot say that you can't be moral without God. That's very, actually, some will put me to shame at least. You know, some people have learned from them. Yes?
What would be the point?
That's what's going to come next. That's the question. Can you be moral without God? And here is, by the way, I'm sure many of you have heard of the secular humanism movement. No God, no problem. Be good for goodness sake. And this is in New York City, by the way. I was searching for forever to try to find a bus in New York that has this sign on it. We don't have to believe in God to be a moral or ethical person. In other words, live your life, don't worry, be good for goodness sake. And there are tons of images like that. So, can you be moral without God? Yes, you can. But the real question, two questions. What is good is one question. What's your definition of good? Can you be good without God? What's good? And the other question is, why be good? And these questions address values and duties. How did you come up with the definition of goodness? How? And why is your definition of goodness better than mine? Define goodness without God. And I would like to hear that answer. Goodness. More so, why should I be good? Give me the obligatory or the duty that I have within me to be good. What's the drive? Why? In what name should I follow your path and not mine? What is good and why be good? Let's talk about these for a second. And then we'll open for questions. What is good? Oops. What is good? Richard Dawkins says, atheists and humanists tend to define, listen carefully, define good and bad deeds in terms of the welfare and suffering of others. Murder, torture, and cruelty are bad because they cause people to suffer. But wait a minute. What's the key word here that I've highlighted? Define. Well, why should I adhere or comply with your definition and not mine? What makes you more superior than me? You define what good is, but that's your definition, not mine. What is good? What is good? As a matter of fact, there's an interesting video. Something about Richard Dawkins, and not to belittle anyone here, but Richard Dawkins was one time asked a question. By the way, those of you who don't know him, he's a very antagonistic and aggressive and just he doesn't like Christianity for some reason, and he's very vocal about it, and he doesn't shy away from it. So he was interviewed one time by a Christian pastor, and then in the interview, Richard Dawkins says, "Do you know what, those Christians, they're so ignorant. They don't even know, they cannot even name the books of the Bible for me. They don't even know what the 4 books of the Gospels are." So the pastor asked him, "Mr. Dawkins, well, I understand that your favorite book is The Origin of Species by Charles Darwin. Can you please name for me the complete title of that book, which is your favorite book?" He goes, "Oh yeah, I know it's The Origin of Species." He goes, "Well, can you please name for me the entire title?" And this was on tape. You can Google this and YouTube that, and you can see that. He goes, The Origin of Species, oh my God, The Origin of Species. Did you hear what he just said? Oh my God. It's a proof of the sovereignty of God that it takes an atheist who doesn't believe in God to ask him to remind him of a book that helped him deny God. Seriously. It's the ultimate proof of the sovereignty of God. And this is what he said. I'm not making that up. Anyways, so what is good? What's your definition of good? Good cannot be defined, as I mentioned to you earlier, by anything less than you. It has to come to you, not from you. The other more important question, why be good? Why? What's the point? As you said, what's the point? Why be good? This moral duty or moral obligation, to whom or to what is it owed? Why? Why can I just live for my own self-interest? Why not pursue pleasure? Plus, it doesn't make any sense. It's irrelevant how you act because you're going to end up in the same place. You're going to die anyway, so why don't you just make the best out of it? Why should I be good? And other questions, why be loving to people? Why be loving to people? Why be charitable to people? Why be honest to people? What is so special about people? If someone who is bad to me, why can I not be bad to them? Yes, sir.
Why can't the motivation be the greater good? For example, if I were to do a scientific experiment and it involves something extreme like torturing people, or even with animals, they'll say, okay, well, it's going to supersede that because we're going to gain something because there's a greater good behind it. I know we kind of looked over that quote that, we're very selfish and really that's not really the intent, but why couldn't the greater good be a reason to be...
But here's the thing, what's so compelling?
For society to function, otherwise it wouldn't be functional. Functionality.
Functionality?
Yeah.
Then here's what I'm trying to get at. And then can I tell you something? My friend, this is not morality. This is pragmatism. And I'm not talking about pragmatism. This is what society functions under. Pragmatism. In other words, whatever works for the greater good, that's what I'm going to pursue. That's not morality. Morality says you have to do this. Not, it's good to do this. Pragmatism says, I don't hit you on your head, you don't die. You don't hit me on my head, I don't die. How can we live together pragmatically so that we can kind of keep the survival of species going? But that's not morality. Okay? So it's good to distinguish between these two. So the unbeliever has no answer. Why be good to people? But the believer does. I am good to others because others have what? Self-worth. Or worth, rather. Okay? They have worth. They have value. because they were created, as Frankie said, they were created in an image, the image of God. That confers value. Yes.
Unbeliever doesn't believe in God. So if I told him it's because of God, so what?
Very good. Unbelievers don't believe in God. Unbelievers don't believe in God. Then that goes back to the slide. Why be good to people?
Exactly. That's why I had no answer for them. I was born.
No. They have no answer for you. You're asking an unbeliever.
If I'm going to answer him from my perspective, he won't believe it. It won't satisfy him.
Very good. Here's very good. But that's not the starting point that you started with. Here's when you're communicating with an unbeliever, you don't come out presupposing that you are a Christian and God is going to say this and this and this and that. This is not your starting point. Your starting point is, and that's why I put that slide first. Your starting point is, as an unbeliever, give me an answer. That's the starting point. He doesn't have an answer. Very good. I can leave him and go, or leave her and go. We can do that. But you can also say, well, you know what? I have an answer. Would you like to hear it? That's what I'm trying to say. But I'm not basing my argument on this. I'm not basing the argument that God gave us the image and so on and so forth because he doesn't believe in God. I'm basing my argument that the unbeliever doesn't have an answer for why I should love others. And I am offering an answer in case he or she wants. But usually it's not the answer they're looking for because they've already made up their mind. Yeah. So, here is a book, Is Goodness Without God Good Enough, that I would recommend for you. It's a debate on faith, secularism, and ethics if you're interested to, again, further discuss it. Giving you some references to further discuss this topic. What happens when objective values are gone? We talked about this. What happens? We replace and exchange one thing. We exchange morality, or when morality is reduced to personal taste, we exchange the moral question, what is good? What is good? With the pleasure question, what feels good? So no longer morality, or morality is no longer dictating how we should live our lives. Our pleasure, our instincts, what feels good takes precedence over what is good. Christianity's answer, if you're interested, here is the answer for that is offered by the Christian faith. Again, when you're talking to an atheist, you may or may not share this with them, but this is at least good for you if you're a Christian believer. Christ did not call us to be moral, he called us to be holy. Okay? There's a difference between morality and holiness. He did not come to make bad people good. He came to make dead people live. And live how? In him, in his utter goodness. But here is the answer that Christianity provides. What is good? We know what is good. Values. Why be good? We know why. Why be good? And these are the duties that we have. But it also answers the question, how to be good, and this is the means of goodness. So these are some answers for you to learn and to know. Yes?
But I think it was John made a very important point and asked a very important question, because I think in this day and age, nowadays, the real issue with atheists when it comes to the moral argument is the difference between pragmatism that you brought up and morality. So could you give us an example of an argument that you would be having, or a discussion you would be having with an atheist, where you would bring up the pragmatic response and how you would hear it?
No, I was going to show you a 2-minute video clip. I think I have it here. No. This is good. It's let me just. Give me just 1 second. There is video clip that will illustrate this much better than I ever do. And it's a 3-minute clip. Yeah. Here you go. Now, this is, it's a debate, although I'm not a big fan of debates, but, or a discussion, I should say. You had your hands up, but that was like 3 minutes ago. Sorry. Okay. She's my niece, so I have to be biased towards her. So there's a debate or discussion between William Lane Craig, who's a Christian philosopher and a thinker and apologist, and Dr. Ravi Zacharias, who's also a Christian thinker and philosopher, and Dr. Lykin, who is a humanist, and he doesn't believe that morality is objective, and he actually believes in kind of pragmatism, or yani, whatever works. That's what pragmatism is, whatever works for the greater good. And let's listen up to what he says here. I'm going to get it from YouTube, so I hope. Share the screen. This is Dr. William Craig.
On what basis can you make that value judgment between these two separate societies? Why think society is better than why is our set of values more superior to any other cultures which adheres to slavery? Why characterize this as a moral improvement rather than just a difference? Well, it certainly is a difference, and the reason I think it's a moral improvement is that all of us have things to offer, and slavery denies large numbers of people the chance to achieve everything that they have offered us. And I happen to think
anyways, that's basically, this is the argument from secular humanists that I think that the debate or the clip explains itself. There is no way you can say something is good and something is bad without an objective moral value. So back, and I know that doesn't answer your question completely, Bishoy, but I think it gives us an idea of those who want to advocate moral relativism. They cannot really defend their position in a logical manner. But to your question, pragmatism differs from morality in a very simple sense, in a very simple way. Anyone can guess? You know what pragmatism means, by the way? Whatever works. That's what pragmatic means, working, or whatever works. What's the difference between pragmatism and morality? They're different. But what's the difference? If you know, yes?
Isn't morality is a standard and it cannot be changed, and pragmatism is basically you can change it.
Morality is transcendent over time. It doesn't change because it's anchored in someone who doesn't change. But pragmatism, what was pragmatic 600 years ago, is not really pragmatic today. So yes, one thing is that it doesn't change morality, that is. What else? They bear similarities. That's why people confuse pragmatism with morality and morality with pragmatism. The greater good, and that's what humanists and atheists hang their argument on, is the greater good. But that's not morality. Morality has another thing, a very key component, a sense of duty and obligation. Pragmatism doesn't. Yes?
But can it be in the sense that when you rely on Christ for objective moral truth, that it's also pragmatic in the sense that it's a sort of interaction, so I'm not condemned to hell?
Very good. Yeah. Very good question. In this sense, pragmatism becomes the effect, not the cause. In other words, pragmatism is the outworking of my morality. Morality is not the outworking of pragmatism. You see? So you started, what I'm saying is that you started with moral laws anchored in Christ. You end up with pragmatism, or with whatever works, whatever works, with a working moral law. But you cannot start with pragmatism and end up with morality. So what you see, it's a cause and effect thing. You see? So, any other questions? I want to be sensitive to your time. Yes?
Yeah, I don't understand how not having a sense of God takes away your sense of duty to your fellow man. So, for example, and again, what John was talking about with pragmatism, or what you termed pragmatism, the original question is why be good? So whether it's, enunciate. So whether it's, why be good, right? So whether it's some sort of moral transcendent code that's been handed down to us, or it's our intrinsic natural desire to be pragmatic and serve and help others, it's still a reason to be good. That's one thing. And I think that this kind of urge and sense to be good that we all have can be something that's explained naturalistically. Like altruism is something that we see in nature in many kinds of, like a dog that's altruistic. You're not going to say he helped save that child because he believes in God, or he understands that there is a God. That's another thing. I'm just going to say everything I have to say.
Please,
yeah.
Go ahead.
As well as like moral absolutism. Who here, I'm going to ask a question, I'm going to ask for hands, right? Who here thinks rape is okay, is morally okay?
No one.
No one. But if we were raised in a tribe in Papua New Guinea and this happens, there's a specific tribe where the women rape the men and it is absolutely okay and moral and part of their culture, right? You can go fast forward to any other place, any other time, Even the Bible.
Can I pause you for a second?
I'm just going to, one more
Okay.
example, because it's on the same point, right? Murder. David, the psalmist, said in a very specific psalm, I want their children's head to be dashed upon the rocks. That's one murder, right? Killing people. That's evolved. Our sense of morality is we've understood more things about human rights. The other thing, divorce, like he was saying, in the Old Testament we could, now we can't. Slavery, which has evolved. So these things evolve, moralities change and are different. And as we understand humanity more, our morality and our sense of good changes and becomes better. So
very good. Thank you for the question. Now, a few things I would like to, gosh, you're going to have to repeat some of those points you made in your question. They're very thought-provoking. But let's talk about the changing morality. In essence, your question is that morality changes over time. One culture calls rape good, the other cultures call rape bad. But let me assure you, what they do is not the same concept of rape that we understand. And I will go back to what I had just mentioned earlier between the difference between the perception of the situation and the value itself. If I were to tell this person in this culture that if you were to desacralize the body of someone against their will for your own selfish desire, they will tell you, no, this is bad. But what I am doing, hold on, let me finish, I'll let you finish. What I am doing is not desacralizing the sanctity of this body for my own selfish desire. What I am doing is that, and let me justify for you the reason why I am forcing myself upon this woman. So, nonetheless, what is that?
Yeah, so what happens is the women gang up on the men, random men.
Right.
And actually it's a travel thing, so a lot of men from other countries will go there to be raped by women, which is cultural abuse.
Right. Okay, so let's not get into details. But what I mean to say is, without getting into specific examples, is there such a thing that is objectively good for this culture and for my culture and for every single culture? Like torturing babies for fun, I'll be dramatic. Do you think the Indians would do that? Or whatever tribal...
Is that a question to me? Maybe not this specific tribe, but for example, if there was...
but some do.
But let's, for example, and I remember I heard this from one of the people in this room, let's say a Muslim man who is trying to convert, let's say in like the 1500s, trying to convert a family, and this family says, no, we believe in whatever, and he kills the men, the whole family, the child too. Maybe gruesomely, maybe
if you were to
them,
ask
that's
this person...
okay for him.
That's right. If you were to ask this person...
David himself, I wish the heads of their children be dashed upon the rock.
Oh, no, you're going to different... I'm still talking about the first point of your question. If you were to ask this Muslim person this objective question, do you think killing this family for no reason, just because for the heck of it, do you think this is something that is morally good or bad? They will always tell you is bad, but here's why they say it's good. Because they can justify their actions based on the perception of the facts they have. The perception of the fact is, I have a book, a divine book, they call it a divine book, that tells me if I do this, I will go to heaven. Therefore, I am going to do this to justify my belief. But the act itself, devoid of that belief, is bad to you and to them. So there's a difference. Bishoy, I love your questions, Bishoy, and I appreciate them, and they're very, like I said, thought-provoking. You need to make a distinction, Bishoy, between what I perceive and the value inherent in that act. So that's one thing. The second question you had about I am not going to here talk about any verses that may seem to be, whatever, because I'll tell you one thing. For you to understand these verses, I cannot take one verse and have anybody explain it, because obviously, if you study literature, you understand the text within the context, okay? Because if you take the text out of the context, it would only be a pretext. It doesn't mean anything. So you have to understand the metaphorical meaning, the analogous meaning, and all these things. They're not, David is not saying take some children and take their heads and smash them against the wall. That's not what he's saying. So I think that's a foregone conclusion. That's, yeah, and that's the metaphorical. Right. But Bishoy, what I want to ask you is a very simple question. Where does this sense of duty, i.e. morality, come from? That's the simple question.
Yeah, sure, and I think you answered it when you were talking
No,
about...
no. I want your answer.
Yeah, I will get to it. When you said that this book tells this person what to do, right? And this sense of duty comes, and it's a very postmodern philosophy, moral relativism, from how you were raised, and how you grew up. So somebody who grew up in this tribe in Papua New Guinea thinks that this sense, it's my duty to go and attack these men. Somebody who was raised here believes it is my duty to enslave this black man. Somebody who was raised here believes it is my duty to help and to do that. Like, so it comes from what you're raised to do. So if you were raised by a psychopath or by all these people, you won't have a sense of morality. You won't have a sense of duty or a sense of helping people, because that's how you view your world around you. And it's very internal. It's the same thing with the religion. Like, we here all believe that Jesus Christ is Lord and Savior because that's how we were raised. If we grew up, and most of us here are Egyptian, if we grew up across the street, to a Muslim family, we believe that La ilaha illallah, and that will be our truth.
Right. Well, then why wouldn't you tell the very poor child that was raised in a very poor family to remain poor and not aspire to be rich and have a good living? So what I'm trying to say, there's a connection. I was going to explain. What I'm trying to say is this: whether I am born a Christian or a Hindu or a Muslim or a Buddhist, if you believe in the entity of God, will send his messages your way or down your path one way or another. So what I mean to say is that I know so many people that were not raised Christians that actually doubted their faith in a healthy way. And they researched other faiths, Islam and other faiths, and then they realized that the evidence point to the Christian faith. Now, I am not saying that this is all you need to rely on is the evidence. There's an element of faith, but that faith is anchored in the evidence. So if I have Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, atheism, and Christianity before me, I was raised in one certain culture or one certain faith. It doesn't mean that I am blind and I cannot see all the other faiths. I am sure many of us as Christians, born from Coptic Orthodox Christian parents, have at one point in time, I would say doubted, but thought of, well, what if it is Islam? What if it is this? What if it is that? I am sure, and I'm not saying this is unhealthy. It could be healthy only if you're seeking the truth, genuinely from your heart. But here's the problem, Bishoy. Sometimes we are not. Sometimes we construct our own truth for reasons that I will explain in a minute, and then we take these truths and say, you know what, Christ doesn't exist, God doesn't exist because of X, Y, and Z. Please.
I completely and wholeheartedly agree with you that this kind of objective search is something that every Christian should do at some point in their life. But I think that a big part of that search is understanding or acknowledging that your faith might be wrong. Having that as an option. Because if you come in with the presupposition that your faith is right, you're doing exactly what you said yesterday when atheists come to you and say, and ask you a question about absolute truth, and then they have an answer in their mind and they're just trying to get you to be wrong. So I think that in your honest search, I think that in beginning it, you should be like, it is a possibility that this could be wrong, and if wrong, I will change it. That's one thing. Two, I think that your allegory of saying that a Muslim, people who are not Christian search with the right faith and they find the right faith to be Christianity, I think that's just allegorical, because I know people personally who've done that and found Islam to be the faith.
Right.
And I've looked at it in just academic rigor. And that's what they found. And I think it's, for that specific person I'm thinking about, it's because of what he prioritizes as important values and how he was raised that made him prioritize certain things in Islam over Christianity.
Sure.
So I believe that what you came into this world with and your family and how your early experiences are a very big factor of who you become throughout your.
They are a factor. But very good,
Very
well
big.
said, well said, Bishoy. And I would also, I would want to say one final thing. You're asking us or me to be doubting the possibility of the truthfulness of Christianity. I would also expect that that would be applied to those who don't believe in Christianity. So if you're asking me to doubt the possibility of my faith, the truthfulness of my faith, I would also like to ask whoever to also doubt his possibility of, what's true and what's false. But here's what true. Right. But what I have, and with my experience, it's limited. Just, it's been for the past decades and speaking with folks that are just not very susceptible to the unbiased slew of evidence that points to the truthfulness of the existence of God and of Christ. What I had found with my experience is that they are very quick to tell you, you Christians are Christians because you're born Christians and you need to doubt and research and explore other faiths and religions. But I'm not willing to do so because I'm an atheist and I will remain to be an atheist. I'm not saying this is your position. I'm just saying that's my experience. And I have come to realize that it's not so much, okay. I would expect that you wouldn't be laughing. But what my experience is that it's not really a matter of the evidence. It is not the evidence. It's not the lack of evidence. It's the suppression of evidence. It's not that atheists don't have enough evidence. It's that they don't want the evidence for reasons that, again, we'll discuss. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Yes.
I don't know if this relates to the point or not, but I consider Buddhist people who are
Buddhism.
Buddhism. These people know a lot about morals, and I've actually heard the Buddhist monk before says that they talk about morals all the time, and they know, like the philosophers, they know a lot of knowledge. They talk a lot about morals.
Yes.
And they know what is right and what is wrong. But they are unable to carry it out. They know what is right and they know what is wrong, but they have no power to do what is right. Unlike from Christ, whatever he said, all his teachings, he applied it to his life.
He lived it.
He lived exactly.
Yes. But also, what's your name?
Paul.
Paul, there's another very good point, but there's another thing that I want to share with you. Morality is not an end in and of itself. It's a means to an end. If I were to ask you, what is the problem with the human condition? What's the problem? Hear me out. There is in every single philosopher and thinker through the years, they've wrestled with 4 questions. What's the problem? What caused the problem? What's the solution? And what is the path to this solution? Take an example, Plato. What's the problem with humanity? Vice, according to Plato. What's the reason for this problem? Ignorance. What's the solution? What's the solution? Virtue. What is the path to this solution? Knowledge. You see? Buddha. Back to your point. Buddhism. What is the problem with humanity in Buddhism? Huh? This is the next question. Suffering. Actually, Buddhism came as a result of the history of Buddhism? Poor guy and a sick man and an old man. So the human condition, the problem with humanity in Buddhism is suffering. Why? What's the reason for this problem? desire. What is the solution in Buddhism? The middle way or the four noble truths? In other words, the elimination of desire. What is the path to this solution? Is the eightfold path of Buddhism. Think the right way, have the right intentions, have the right conduct, and do all these moral things you mentioned. You see? So there are always four questions. Sigmund Freud, Nietzsche, all the thinkers have always struggled. Actually, this is in medicine. What are the symptoms, the problem, the symptoms? Okay? And what is the prognosis? Symptoms, cure, and medicate treatment. You see? So these four questions are very standard, very common. Now let's see what these four questions are. By the way, this is Christianity in 30 seconds. Understanding what Christianity is in 30 seconds. What is the problem? Not sin. Death is the problem, not sin. What is the cause of the problem? Sin. What's the solution? Life. What's the way to the solution? Christ. That's Christianity. That was the answer that all the philosophers and sociologists and scholars and thinkers were struggling with. How can I live? To your question, Buddhism focuses on morality. Morality is not the answer. I can be the most moral person and end up in the grave. The problem with humanity is not sin or is not bad people or good. The problem with humanity is that we die. That's the problem that Buddhism is not going to help you with. Atheism is not going to help you with. Confucianism is not going to help you with. The problem is that we die and we need life. And that, my friends, is the way of the Christian, or explanation of what Christianity is all about. So you can talk morality all you want, but this is not what we need. Like I said earlier, God did not come, or Christ did not come to make bad people good. He came to make dead people live. You see? And goodness, as we said, Helena, goodness becomes the logical outworking of being alive in Christ. I hope that, okay, we're good, we're just gonna say good. Bishoy, do you mind if we continue on offline? I would like to hear more from your perspective because this is very helpful to me. So do you mind? Okay, so we'll continue on offline. Any other comments or questions? Yes, sir. Hold on. Get you a mic.
This is going to take us back a little, but you had mentioned that objective morality is a benchmark that we pretty much does not change. Okay. Is this good enough? Yes. Okay, perfect. Going back to objective morality, you had mentioned that it's fixed, it does not change, it's not relative. I'll use one of the examples that you gave. Dishonesty, for example, could be different from one person to another. One could achieve something or do something that is perceived as dishonest, another not. What are your thoughts on that?
If you perceive it differently, it doesn't make dishonesty honesty. You perceiving it different doesn't make it different. If I perceive, what's your name? Philip. If I perceive you as Michael, it doesn't make you Michael. It still makes you Philip. So what I mean to say, it doesn't matter if someone perceives dishonesty as honesty. It doesn't matter. It's still dishonesty.
Well, loyalty, for example. You could see something as being not loyal, while the person that is being not loyal to you thinks it's loyal, it's fine.
The problem is not with loyalty. The problem is with the person who's perceiving loyalty and disloyalty.
Well, this will go back and forth because we have different perspectives. So it's not, there's no benchmark that we're measuring against.
Very good, and that's the point. Is there a benchmark or is there not a benchmark? Or is it all relative? Because if there's no benchmark, you know what I could do? I can walk out right now. What's your car brand model?
Toyota.
Toyota. If I go out to your car and key it all the way to the side and say, hey, according to what I'm doing, this is actually a very cool thing to do. I think so, but you think it's bad. What's the benchmark? I am just giving you a very silly example, but who's to say? I can go and do very harmful things to you or your friends and say, what's the benchmark? So it's unlivable not to have a benchmark. I'm using the same words, or a standard by which we can say good or bad. It's very unlivable. You can't live in a society like that. Show me a society that has no benchmark, and I'll show you an extinct civilization. Anarchy becomes the outworking of that. Comments or questions? Last question. Okay. Oh, any other last questions? You want to see something? Okay. Nathan?
I was just thinking that a lot of the confusion seems to be coming from not distinguishing between the ontological reality of morality and the epistemological apprehension of morality. That is to say, on the one hand, there are really things such as moral values, objective. But on the other hand, how we perceive those, how we come to know those, that's the fancy word is epistemological question. Those are two different things. So there's something objective for something to be objectively binding, it has to be independent of whether we think it's right or wrong. So, for example, rape of a little child is always really wrong in every possible universe in all situations, whether you believe that or not. Otherwise, then you're forced to say, well, it's just a product of sociobiological evolution or something. And my morality, what's good for me may not be good for you, but it's fine for me. And then you have no way to distinguish between the two of right or wrong. But most people at least assume there's right or wrong. They won't say something like, at least they assume they're right, that there's no right or wrong. So I think there's a problem.
Excellent. Thank you very, very much, Nathan. This is excellent. And by the way, the word epistemology means knowing, or how do we know what we know? That's what Nathan was referring to. Ontological, the essence of morality. Epistemology is how do we know morality, and they're two distinct things. And this is a good answer to Philip's question. Where's Philip? Oh, Philip's questions, yeah. So thank you for sharing that with us. Okay, I think we come to the conclusion of this discussion, and we will resume again. Bishoy will let us know. Thanks again.